Jeff's information in the chat. We are also streaming live on Facebook. So we would like to welcome our Facebook family. Come on in this room and get some education. All right, good morning. Good morning. I would like to say good morning to everyone who took their time to come in with us this morning and spending your morning with the Deltas from Stark County. My name is Tramel Martin. I will be your moderator for the hour. I just want to give you some house rules, or not really rules, because just some friendly things that we want to share with you today. We're going to have Jeff McDaniel speak, but he is such an informative person. You want to make sure you have some paper. You want to make sure you have pencils and just jot down some questions in the chat. We will have some of the Deltas that will be monitoring the chat. So I will make sure I'll have your questions, but if you would like to come off of mute and say something and ask Jeff, who took their time to, we will have some. I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. We still have people coming in, but today we are doing the first series of the Money Matters series. Again, my name is Tramel Martin. I'll be your moderator. I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Stark County Alumni Chapter. Just going to give you some background information about the Deltas. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a non-for-profit organization whose purpose is to provide assistance and support through the established programs in local communities and throughout the world. Since its founding in 1913, more than 300 women have joined our illustrious organization, which was founded on January 13, 1913 at Howard University by our 22 virtuous founders. Give a shout out to them founders. Delta provides an array of public service initiatives through its 5-point programmatic thrust. One being economic development, which we are going to touch on today. 2 being educational development. 3, international awareness and involvement. 4, physical and mental health. 5, political awareness and involvement. Through this Financial Fortitude initiative, we are here today with the Stark County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and we will present to you the Money Matters series, an economic empowerment essentials webinar. But we will not leave you without strategies to preserve retirement income. The current economic development initiative is a process that will help participants set and define goals, develop a plan to achieve goals, and then put them into action. Those of you who don't know, I'm an educator by trade. So that's why I kept asking you to have your pencils and your papers ready. But the main thing, what we want to do today, we're going to have a conversation, but we do not want to leave out the objectives. So what are the objectives? They are: 1, we are going to set and define goals. 2, we are going to develop a plan and put them into action. And what was the last one? Oh, somebody did say that. We got to define and set them. We got to develop them and achieve them so we can have a plan to achieve them. And then we're going to put them into action. So I am not going to be talking all the time through this here presentation, but I have an expert that is able to help us make it through. We have Jeff McDaniels. He is a financial advisor at Ameriprise Financial. Jeff graduated from the University of Dayton with a BS in accounting and also has an MBA in management and finance from Kent State University, which is my alma mater. Currently, Jeff sits on the Board of Commissioners for Metropolitan Housing Authority. He is treasurer at Faith United Christian Church and the endowment director for Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Akron Alumni Chapter. Jeff has received numerous awards, but we're just going to name a few. Leadership Stark County Graduate and Alumni Association member, Progressive Professional Award, Phi Beta Sigma Great Lakes Region, Very Involved Persons Award, given by Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Akron Alumni Chapter. Jeff is married to our dear soror, Janine McDaniels, and they have one lovely daughter, Brooklyn McDaniels. So some people have heard of Susie Orman, maybe Dave Ramsey, but today we are going to hear from our hometown community financial guru, and he's going to kick us off with our Money Matters series. Our goal for today is to get our audience set to define goals, develop a plan to achieve these goals, and put them into action. Now, for the next 30 to 45 minutes, you will hear from Jeff. But I just also want you to remember, you can find him at ameriprise.com. His email is jeffrey.s.mcdaniels@ampf.com. And his phone number is 330-628-8023. Now we will hear from Jeff.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. What I'm going to try to do in this presentation, just to go through a bunch of slides and just have you listen to me on more of like an academic presentation. I really want this to be interactive. And what that means is if you have a question anytime during this presentation, please feel free to raise your hand, send a question to the chat room, just make the moderator aware that you have a question. So I want to answer your question on the spot. And if it gets too long for the answer, I'll cut it off and entertain or finish answering the question at the very end. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of background here in terms of how I want today, what we're going to try to cover today. We're not going to try to make this a get rich quick scheme or something that you can walk away from and act like, oh, you have all the answers. When it comes to financial planning, especially retirement planning, it is an evolving thing. It is a very personalized thing. And everything I talk about today won't apply to everyone. Some of the things will apply to you, some of the things won't apply to you. Because we have people maybe in their 20s, some people in their 30s, maybe mid 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. But hopefully, at least one or two things I say today will resonate with you, or maybe provoke some thought, or maybe want to generate some additional questions, how some of these concepts may apply to you. So the main purpose here is to talk about sustaining your retirement income. In other words, and to make it simple in simpler terms, let's make sure you don't run out of money in retirement. That's what today's topic is, okay? So again, if you have any additional questions over and above this or not related, feel free to contact me anytime. I have no problem answering a question, email, whatever the case may be. So to get started, before I get to the slide, I want to say kind of like how I got even started doing this. And I'm gonna tell you what happened. I'm gonna read this, something I saw on Instagram of all places just yesterday. And the slide or the Instagram post said, would have started saving money in kindergarten if I knew life was like this. Again, would have started saving money in kindergarten if I knew life was like this. And for me, that's very apropos. And I'm gonna tell you why. And it really struck a chord with me because, believe it or not, I didn't start saving money in kindergarten, but I started in first grade. I really did. Let me tell you how. I'm from Rochester, New York. And in Rochester, back in those days, there was a Rochester Savings Bank. And they had a program for the grade school kids where they had a brown envelope with Rochester Savings Bank on it with amounts in your name. And you would get those envelopes at school. You'd bring them home to your parents, and you could put money in those envelopes, take it back to school, and they would, deposit those monies in a savings account for you. Okay, so my mother actually started saving for me in first grade. And believe I'm going to tell you exactly how it went. We started with $0.25 a week. Then it went to like maybe 50 cents a week. I remember it got to $1 a week. And I think it topped out somewhere like maybe $5 a week. Now keep in mind, this is in the 60s, okay? $5 a week I was saving. And believe it or not, I had that same account when I went to college at age 17 to the University of Dayton. And in that account, I had, I'm gonna use the term, amassed $2,600. I had $2,600 saved as a 17-year-old, okay? That may not sound like a lot of money today, but back in those days, a full semester of college was about $3,000. I mean, a full year of college about $3,000. So I had almost my first year of college paid for, believe it or not. That simple savings plan, okay? And so the first point I want to make, and this point is going to be a theme throughout this whole presentation, is that no matter how much money you make, I would strongly encourage you to spend less than what you make. I don't care how old you are, how mature you are, if you're new to investing, it doesn't matter. Always spend less than what you make. Because think about it. If you spent more than what you make, right, you're going to be in debt. But if you spend less than what you make, you have automatic savings, right? So that's going to be a theme throughout this whole thing, and a basis of me even being in this business, and the basis of, I think, my presentation today. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to the slides, if I will. Let me get this going here. Let's see here. Okay, now I've got to share this. Let's see. Oops. Bear with me a second. Right. Share screen. Okay, let's go to, where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, thank you. Can everybody see the screen? It says strategy for a sustainable income in retirement. Can everyone see it? Okay, all right. So that's the main topic for today. And I'm gonna go through these slides, and I may go through them, very rather quickly. But again, if you have a question on anything, please, ask the question, and we can, stop it. Let's see here. Just give me a second. Okay, I think we're ready now. Okay. So again, strategy for a sustainable income in retirement. So again, the topic for the day, we're going to look at the challenges to prepare for in retirement. Then we're going to look at considerations for achieving a successful retirement. And finally, practical approaches to managing an income. And I'm going to add one more topic at the very end, and that is going to be some tips to boost your retirement income at the very end. I'm going to cover that as well. Okay, challenges to prepare for in retirement. Okay, if you can see this is a mountain chart that, let me do one other thing here before I get started. If I can get that, doesn't matter. Let's see, doesn't pop up, no big deal. It's a Martin chart, and it shows you your accumulation phase of retirement assets. In other words, on the left-hand side, you can see where it says saving for retirement. And things like you should consider is taking advantage of tax benefits, diversifying your asset allocation between stocks, bonds, and cash, automated savings like through a 401k, 403b, regular savings program out of your payroll check through payroll deduction. And then at the very top of that mountain, you're going to have a general sense of your retirement date. Now, to the right of the mountain chart is what we call the distribution phase and or managing income in retirement. For example, whether or not you should annuitize your account. You have uncertainty about longevity. Who knows how long one's going to live? When to withdraw and how much? When to claim Social Security. Inflation, your ability to work, sequence of risk. I'm going to spend a little time later on sequence risk. That's important. Higher healthcare costs and changing income needs through your retirement years. So again, this is just the basis of this. Left, you're accumulating assets, and on the right side, you're going to be distributing those assets. Now, one of the main concerns that everybody should be concerned about is their longevity. No one knows how long one's going to live. But generally speaking, you should plan on spending 20 to 30 years in retirement. Now, this chart here gives you an example. If you reach age 65, what is your probability of living to, let's say, age 70, 75, 80, so on and so forth? So, for example, if you're 65 today, you have about a 93% to live to age 80, about a 68% chance to live, a 93% chance to live to age 70, 82% chance to live to age 75, a 68% chance to live to age 80, and 49% to 85 and longer. And basically about 2% of the population will live to age 100. So the key here, you want to make sure you don't run out of money. That's extremely important. And that's the basis of our discussion today. Okay. Sequence risks when you retire can make a big difference. Now be with me just for a second here and just indulge me. This is an example of somebody with $1 million portfolio, okay? Now, everybody doesn't have $1 million portfolio. Some people may have a $500,000 portfolio. They may have a $250,000 portfolio or less. You just never know. So this is all relative. Doesn't really matter. It's all relative, okay? But using this example with $1 million portfolio, and let's say you decide to withdraw 5% annually, and also to increase a little bit to keep up with inflation. Well, inflation right now is about, let's say 2.5%, 3%. So you're going to increase that a little bit on top of the 5%. And if you have a portfolio of I'll call a fairly balanced portfolio with about 6% in stocks, 30% in bonds, and 10% in cash. That's what this illustration shows you. Now, if you retired with that kind of portfolio in 1980, with these assumptions, 5% withdrawal rate, you'd have about $1.7 million today. You actually grew your portfolio, had the withdrawal rate that you wanted to achieve, and kept up with inflation. Now, what if you had retired in 1990 with that same set of assumptions? You'd have about $1.8 million today. Again, you grew your portfolio. But here's the downside. Let's say you retired in the year 2000 with the same set of assumptions. You'd actually be you would have had a deficit created of about $472,000. Now, instead of being in a hole for 70, you probably would have adjusted your spending, made some changes to your whole situation. Who knows what you would have done? You would have downsized. You could have done a lot of different things. All this illustration shows you is it does matter when you retire using a portfolio and that type of withdrawal rate. So what you suggest, is that the right withdrawal rate? That could be a question you might ask. So we might talk about that a little bit later. Next thing you got to look at is the erosion of your purchasing power. Look at 1994. A new home cost about $106,000, but today it costs about $380,000. A gallon of milk was $2.29.94. Now it's $3.19. Gallon of gas was about $1.09 in 94, now it's about $2.67, and that fluctuates a lot. But look what's projected. In the year 2044, a new home is projected to cost about $835,000. Gallon of milk about $7, and a gallon of gas approaching $6. This is real, folks. So you've got to plan for inflation and how your purchasing power can be eroded over time. Healthcare costs, they do pose a serious challenge. Look at the way, this chart shows you how healthcare premiums have risen extremely fast relative to the overall inflation rate and people's earnings. So if you go back to 1999 versus today, healthcare insurance premiums have risen 239%, whereas workers' earnings only have increased about 68%, and inflation has only been about 50% in that time period. Again, you gotta be prepared for challenges when it comes to healthcare. Long-term care costs are staggering. Long-term services and supports are very expensive, often exceeding what beneficiaries in the family can afford. So for example, if you had to go to a nursing facility today, it's gonna cost you about $102,000. Versus if you had a home healthcare aid, it costs you about almost $53,000. Versus an adult daycare, costs you, almost $20,000. So somewhere along the line, when it comes to long-term care costs, you're gonna be using one or a combination of these kind of services. But the situation is those costs are rising. And we're gonna talk about maybe some remedies to deal with that a little bit later.
Jeff, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
That was sent to me. A couple slides ago, you had mentioned about when things like crash or the market crash. The question was, how do you suggest one recover from the crash?
Okay. The main thing you've got to do when you have a market crash, well, the first thing you should do is you should make sure your asset allocation, and that is your allocation towards stocks versus bonds versus cash, is suitable for you to withstand a market crash. So in other words, you should deal with that with a market crash in mind. And that doesn't mean jumping in and out of the market either, okay? It means having an asset allocation that you can live with. So say, for example, the market goes down 25%. That means your stock allocation, asset allocation may go to about 25% or more, okay? So you've got to make sure that you can withstand that level of risk if that does happen. And if it doesn't happen, you're good, you're good for that, or you can, it won't be an issue for you. So you got to do that up front. Let's say you caught short and you haven't adjusted your asset allocation. You're going to basically have to adjust your expenses. You're going to have to cut expenses. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You just have to cut your expenses and maybe lower your lifestyle. Again, that goes back to my first point. You always want to spend less money than you make. And hopefully your savings or your emergency saving, emergency fund can help you bridge that gap until the market recovers. Okay.
Thank you.
What about Social Security? Well, in 1950, there were 16 US workers for each Social Security beneficiary. Today, there are less than 3 workers in the system that's supporting Social Security for each beneficiary. Staggering, okay? Today, the benefits owed currently exceed taxes collected. That's an issue, all right? Notwithstanding that Congress has borrowed from the Social Security Fund over the years and have not replenished that money, and they really should do that. And according to some of the projections, the Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted in the year 2035. Okay, so that makes people question the viability of Social Security that I'm gonna tell you the majority of Americans are counting on, okay? The problem with Social Security and making adjustments to it is no administration, Republican or Democrats, wanna be the ones to make those big changes to shore this thing up because everybody feels, we gotta increase the taxes. Well, you know what? We're gonna have to increase taxes or we're gonna have to adjust certain things to funding Social Security. For example, you could raise the limit of where Social Security taxes collected. Right now, I think it's somewhere about $135,000. You don't have to pay any more Social Security tax. We need to raise that limit, okay? And or we can adjust the age that one starts taking Social Security. You can always push that back. Or you get to raise the percentage that we're collecting for Social Security out of one's paychecks. To me, it's just one math problem. It's not even a complicated math problem. It can be figured out. But one of our administrations are going to have to stand up and bite the bullet and make sure, we make those changes to make sure Social Security is still viable when we all need it.
Jeff, I have another question.
Go right ahead.
One of our audience members said her company or his company, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said her, excuse me, but their company will not let them withdraw money out of the 403B due to the COVID pandemic and wants to know, is this legal?
That's a good question. I don't, when you ask a question, I don't know the exact answer to that one, whether it's legal or not, because I'm not an attorney, but it doesn't sound like it's legal to me. Because those are vested assets that you have a vested interest in. I could see them trying to discourage it, or maybe not, maybe doing a match or trying to change the program. But man, I don't see how that's legal. I just don't. I don't know the answer to that one in all honesty. But man, that doesn't sound right, because those are your assets. I can see them restricting in some way, but if you have vested assets, I don't see why you can't take withdrawals. I don't see that one at all. But yeah, that's more of a legal question. I don't really have the answer to, in all honesty. I hadn't heard that one either, by the way.
Okay. And then I also have another question. What if you are in PERS versus Social Security? Mm-hmm. And does that person want to know what is the difference between it? Okay. You may unmute yourself.
Okay, is that the question? PERS versus Social Security?
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Oh. I just wanted to know, I've been in PERS for eons. I have very, very little Social Security. And so even though I think Social Security is a good thing and they do need to fix it, PERS is not handled the same way. PERS is not handled the same way.
Right. Let me tell you something. The experience I've seen over the years, PERS has been a pretty good system. And actually, I think is good as, maybe even better than Social Security for a lot of people. I think the benefits might even be a little bit better. PERS is a public employee retirement system, for government workers, teachers, administrators, that kind of thing. And in Ohio, it's managed by the state of Ohio, and they've done a pretty good job over the years with it. A very good job. You talk about teachers not making the salaries that they should make, but I tell you what I've seen pretty good retirements from people in the PERS system. All right. Social Security is for people outside of public employees. They're like private employers and what have you. You contribute a percentage out of your paycheck, and your employer matches that percentage. And over time, they give you guidelines as to what your income can be at retirement. Basically, it's based on your 3 highest years of income, no matter when those are, to determine what your Social Security benefit is. And you can choose when you can take it, as early as 62. A lot of people, their full retirement age might be later than that, 65, 66, 67. And the latest you can start taking Social Security for the highest benefit is age 70. Okay. So public employee, PERS is public employees, and Social Security is for non-public employees, let's say. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. This is Latrice. I have a question.
Go right ahead.
It was mentioned in the chat, and I'm just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about deferred compensation.
Okay. Deferred compensation is an additional benefit that employers have for you. Basically, you can set aside a certain percentage of your income over and above what you might contribute to your 401k plan. And basically just and it accumulates on a tax deferred basis over time. Okay. And then you can tap into that as an additional savings or retirement vehicle after you retire. So if you're going to, and sometimes you have the ability, if you have the ability to set aside additional income for yourself for retirement or for use at a later time, I would encourage you to take advantage of it. And that's just on top of everything else that you may have. A lot of employers don't offer that, but if you have the ability to be in a deferred comp plan, I would jump all over it, especially if you can afford it. A lot of times employers, they kick in a little kicker to you, you know, and for that deferred comp too as an incentive. So it's additional benefit that employers offer.
Thank you, everybody,
Mhm.
for those questions. Keep them coming in the chat.
Now, let's talk about some methods of achieving a successful retirement. One of the things you want to make sure you do not withdraw too much, too higher percentage. We want to address the longevity risk that we talked about earlier, understanding the benefit of guaranteed income and how that can help you. You want to be smart about taxes. We're going to make the right decision on Social Security and also have a plan for unexpected risk. Okay, now, this talks about choosing the right withdrawal rate. And that is, what percentage of your assets are you going to be withdrawing at retirement time, whether that be 3%, 4%, or higher, okay? Over time, the retirement industry has established the 4% rule. And 4% has been determined to be the safe rate, if you will, that you don't normally run out of money. Now look at this chart right here. It says if you withdraw 3% of your retirement balance, it'll last you 50 years. Well, if you think about it, if you retire at age 60 and it's going to last you 50 years, that means you can live to 110 and never run out of money, okay? Which is a good thing, and hopefully you get there. But most people, like I said earlier, you want to plan for at least 25 to 30 years of retirement. So if you use a 4% withdrawal rate, that should last you 30 years, and that's going to meet the majority of folks' needs based on life expectancy tables and that. But think about it now. If you get a little more aggressive in that withdrawal and have a higher rate, let's say 5%, that might only last you 20 years. And 6% will last you about 16 years, so on and so on. For example, if you want to be super aggressive and you start taking out money at a rate of 10% a year, you're only going to that money lasts you about 10 years. Again, that's using this asset allocation of 6% stocks, 30% bonds, 10% cash. And again, that's been studied over a period of years. Okay, use that asset allocation. That doesn't mean it had to be yours, but if you use that asset allocation, this is the results you would get at the various withdrawal rates. Okay, adjust your plans as you go. So we talked about that withdrawal rule. One of the things what might happen is you start taking out too much money, and let's say your portfolio has a big negative return year. Then instead of adjusting your withdrawal for inflation, don't adjust it for inflation. Either keep that withdrawal rate where it's at, or maybe try to cut it to make up for a big negative portfolio return year. That's one thing you can do. Or you can look at preserving your capital. If your withdrawal rate is greater than your spending rate, I'm sorry, greater than 20% of your initial spending rate, then you got to cut your spending by about 10% to try to make up. You just got to cut your spending, right? But if you want to prosper in retirement, and if your withdrawal rate is less than your 20% of initial spending rate, you can actually increase your spending. So in other words, if you go into retirement with a very low withdrawal rate, you get a chance to actually grow your portfolio better and maybe even increase your lifestyle if you're very conservative. Or if you're trying to save money, maybe you can save money in retirement. You know, if you don't spend all the money you make and you build in a savings rate or a savings cushion for you in retirement, you might down the road be able to actually increase your spending by maybe 10% or so. Again, we talked about longevity risks. And I think we pretty much covered this already, so I think I won't even spend that much time in it. This talks about the probability if you're conservative versus balanced. But I will say this though, this slide, you talk about a conservative allocation. You know, many people want to get conservative in retirement, try to make their money last longer. That's a good thing to do, generally speaking. But if you're too conservative, you don't give your portfolio a chance to grow in retirement, and you have a couple of negative years in there, you know, this suggests that, you know, this conservative allocation in 30 years, you might run out of 34%, you have a 34% chance of running out of money. Versus you have a balanced portfolio, let's say 60% stock, 30% bond, 10% cash. In 30 years, you have a 78% chance of, you know, not running out of money. Okay.
Jeff,
Yes.
I received a text message and
Okay.
a gentleman wants to know if he started late um, with stocks and bonds. How would you
Mhm.
suggest to recover from that? Because he's already in his 50s, but he
Okay.
started late. So what would you suggest that he start with, or what
Okay.
path would you
Okay.
put him on?
If you start late, what you got to do, you got to catch up. And the main thing, the way to catch up is you got to just put more money in retirement accounts. You want to try to max out your 401k or your 403b, and at least contribute enough so that you get the match from the company, because that's free money. Okay, that's free money. So if you don't put in the max, you're just hurting yourself. Another thing you can do is that you can contribute up to, and I'm going to talk about this later, but you can contribute up to $6,000 a year in a regular IRA. But if you're over age 40, you can contribute up to $7,000 in a year in a Roth IRA, which is a tax-free IRA. The regular IRA is tax deferred, and a Roth, all the earnings go in a Roth IRA at tax-free. And you can put in $7,000 more. So you put about $1,000 more in Roth and regular IRA, and that's what they call a catch-up provision for anybody age 50 or older. Okay. So you want to do those kind of things, or you could put money aside. You get a lump sum of money, you can always put money aside in an annuity, whether it be a fixed annuity or variable annuity. And you can put an unlimited amount of money in an annuity and have it grow tax deferred. Okay. And that could be another way you can catch up over time. And annuities many times offer you guaranteed rates of return. And that's one of the pluses to annuities, especially variable annuities. Okay, and we might even talk about that a little bit, in some future slides. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this slide talks about adding. Here we go. Adding guaranteed income to your portfolio to improve your results. Again, all these numbers are relative, and it uses a $1 million portfolio in this slide. And that portfolio, again, is invested in 60% equities, 30% bonds, 10% cash. And you got that 5% withdrawal rate that we're going to adjust for inflation. With that kind of portfolio at a 5% rate, over a 30-year period, there's a 77% chance that you won't run out of money. So that's a pretty good situation. All right. Think about this though. What if you only invested $750,000 or a similar amount on a relative basis in that same kind of portfolio, but added 25% or $250,000 of that portfolio to purchase a fixed annuity using the same 5% withdrawal rate over a 30-year period? Now you have increased your chances of not running out of money to 94%. Now, this guaranteed income can be in the form of a pension, a PRS distribution, pension. It can be in the form of a fixed annuity, a variable annuity. Social Security is another form of guaranteed income. So what you got to do is you got to piece or basically determine or develop where your money or your income is going to come from in retirement. Whether it's going to come from a 401k, 403b, Social Security, annuity, inheritance that is coming, and you got to figure out how you're going to allocate those assets to meet your income need over time. But again, all this does is suggest if you have some guaranteed income in your portfolio, you basically increase your chances of success. Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about taxes. And all this chart really does, it talks about the benefit of using tax-free sources of income. And all that suggests is the higher your tax bracket, the greater advantage tax-free income has for you. So if you're in a higher income tax bracket, you're going to make more money in a tax-free account on an after-tax basis than you would in a taxable account. But let's say you're in the middle, in the let's say 22, 24% tax bracket. You want to plan your withdrawals from your taxable accounts. That's going to help you from a tax standpoint. But if you're in a lower tax bracket, you're going to benefit more for taking money out of tax deferred accounts. Now, the kind of accounts I'm talking about, for example, tax-free accounts would be things like municipal bonds that are tax-free, state and federal taxes. things like your Roth IRA, where all the earnings are tax-free, that almost anybody can take advantage of as long as they have some earned income. Taxable accounts would be savings accounts, regular investment accounts, things like that. And tax deferred account would be your annuity accounts. It would be like your IRAs, annuities, whether it be fixed or variable. Okay. Again, all this shows is the higher your tax bracket, the greater advantage tax-free sources of income will have for you. Let's talk about Roths a little bit here. I've talked about Roths a little bit. Use a Roth strategy to control your tax bill. Sources of tax-free income in retirement, that's what a Roth is. You can access tax-free sources of income to provide you more options and where to draw your income from. With a Roth, though, there's no mandatory withdrawal at age 70 and a half like you have with an IRA. You can, and actually that rule has changed last year. Your IRA withdrawal is what they call your required minimum distribution, RMD. That's been pushed back to age 72. So all that means is you can leave money in an IRA, 401k till age 72 and not have to take any money out. But at age 72, you do have to do what they call a required minimum distribution based on current tax law. Who knows, that could change with the next administration. It's hard to say. So it really suggests having a portion of your retirement savings in a Roth IRA can provide a hedge against the threat of rising taxes in retirement. And I would tell you folks, I hate to say it, but I really think tax rates are gonna go up. They're gonna go up. Think about these stimulus packages that we've had and we're gonna probably have. I mean, the government is just creating a bigger and bigger deficit. It's like you in your own household, 2 or 3 credit cards, and you max them all out. Well, somewhere along the line, you gotta pay that tax bill. I'm sorry, that credit card bill. Same thing with the government. We can't keep going on printing money on the full faith and credit of the U.S. Government. Somewhere along the line, you've got to pay. That bill has to be paid, and that's more than likely going to come from higher taxes. Now, good. Again, we could have growth in the economy, and that can help. But our deficits are just getting so large that taxes is going to have to be tweaked somewhere along the line. We can't keep going on like this. Now, the next slide talks about making the right decision on Social Security. Because for a lot of people, Social Security is the only source of guaranteed income for many retirees. I think I read a statistic somewhere about 62% of retirees really rely upon Social Security. Expected life expectancy is a factor, but you can consider your spouse before claiming early. In other words, what age do you take that Social Security? Do you take it at 62, the earliest age? 66, that may be your full retirement age? Or age 70 is where you're gonna get your highest benefit. You also wanna consider maximizing your survivor benefit to address longevity risk. So if one spouse makes a lot more money than the other spouse, and let's say the lower earning spouse, the higher earning spouse passes away, then that survivor can elect to take the higher benefit from the spouse that just that passed away. So they call that a survivor benefit. You can switch over to the higher benefit later. You can have both. But you can elect to switch to the higher spouses, whoever survives. Okay. So these are big decisions. My wife and I, we talk about Social Security all the time when we start taking it and so forth. I'm like, yeah, we don't need it. Just wait down the road kind of thing. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to all those arguments. There are pros and cons to it. But what you've got to do is you've got to look at where your income is coming from, where you expect it to come from, where you know it can come from to make that decision as to when the best age. That's a very individualized decision. There's no one, answer for all, whether you take it early or late. It's just very individualized and depends on your situation. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap up pretty quick here. I think I was just passing this slide. We've talked about all those things already. Let's look at some practical approaches to managing income. Oh, this is pretty good here. You wanna look at a bucket approach many times. In other words, you wanna look at maybe a short-term bucket of money, maybe a mid-term bucket of money, and a long-term bucket of money. Your short-term money should be invested in things like savings accounts, cash, CDs, money markets, short-term bonds, immediate annuities, Social Security and pension income, and your wages. That's where your short-term money comes from, right? And then money that you're going to use or need 3 to 10 years down the road is your midterm bucket. And that could be a mix of things like bonds, deferred annuities, absolute return funds, asset allocation, and balance funds. Not very aggressive, but kind of middle of the road. And then your long-term money should invest in things like growth stocks, funds, real estate, commodities. Those things provide an inflation hedge and help to address your longevity risk. Another thing you want to do is match your expenses with your income sources. The main thing you want to cover, and look at that, the center of the slide. We're talking about essential expenses, things like your housing, utilities, food, healthcare, transportation, and taxes. Those should be covered by your Social Security, pension income, annuities, fixed income, your RMDs, required minimum distribution, and dividends. Those are the things that you're going to pay month in, month out. You have no discretion on. Then look to the left, where it talks about discretionary expenses, things like travel, entertainment, other discretionary items. They can come from maybe portfolio withdrawals, 401k or a savings account or an investment account. Maybe you work a little bit on the side, a little part-time job. Maybe somebody leaves you a gift or bequests you some money. That's maybe those expenses come from those kind of sources. And to the right, your emergency expenses. I always think, I don't care how old you are, I think you always should have an emergency fund set aside for the unexpected. Health-related things, long-term care we talked about, family emergencies, or unforeseen events like legal issue and what have you. They can come from things like maybe your insurances, emergency savings, and maybe you might have to tap into a home equity line of credit as a backup if you don't have access to the other forms of emergency type funds. Okay, a few closing thoughts. It is critical for investors to prepare for the certain and the uncertain risk. A thoughtful income strategy can help you address these challenges and attain the lifestyle and retirement that you desire. But I would encourage all of you to meet with your financial advisor to assess your personal situation. Don't try to do it all alone. Don't try to do it on Google. Don't ask your neighbor. Don't ask your cousin. Talk to somebody that has some experience, even a parent or an older person that you trust and can, you don't mind sharing some personal information. So you need to go talk to somebody that can really give you some sound advice. Let's don't try to do it all on your own.
Jeff, I have another question.
Okay.
How do you read your statements? If you are already linked with a financial advisor, can you give us some ideas on how to read the statements and to understand it, especially if it's a new person who just became, just retired and just has not had these things like, met with the advisor, but doesn't know how to read the statements well. Can you help us?
I'll tell you what, that responsibility should be on whoever your advisor is. Okay, that person should be able to break down the various components of your financial, of your statement, your account statement, tell you what to look for, tell you how to monitor it, those kind of things. Now, if you don't really have a financial advisor in a case like that, and you've got a question about a statement, I'm available. I'll be happy to try to answer the question for you, give you some kind of direction along those lines. But really, that should be incumbent upon the person who you're working with. They should be able to help you with that. That's a part of their job, quite frankly. Okay. Now, before we wrap up, there's one other thing I do want to do. Let's see here. I want to go to another slide here. And if my technical person can help me real quick, I don't want to mess this up. Let's see. Stop share. Right. Just give me a second. Yeah. Okay, let's see. It is right there. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. The last thing I want to cover here is a few tips to boost your retirement income. And this may be helpful. The first thing I think you should do is start, and this is at retirement age, when you're ready to make that move, okay, and you're there, right? You're about to do it. you want to start by reevaluating and reducing your expenses. There's certain expenses that I think you can probably reevaluate and maybe cut or maybe eliminate in many cases, things like your cable bills. Maybe you can cut some of those things and some other streaming services and that kind of thing. Your cell phone bill, maybe you don't have the greatest need for the big, blown out plan that you're paying for right now. Maybe you can just, or you can shop it around, or maybe various subscription services that you might subscribe to. You might want to let some of those providers know, hey, you're shopping it around, so maybe you might be able to get a better deal. Also, how about cash allowances to grown children? I know many of us, we probably did better than our parents did and that type of thing. We want to give our kids all this stuff, but grown kids, you might want to reevaluate the money you're giving them and let them know, you know what, mommy and daddy about to retire, or we retired now. You gotta grow up and, be your own person like we had to do. Something to consider. Another thing you want to do is review and request your proposals for life, health, and auto insurance, okay? Again, you might want to shop that one around too, and let these providers know, hey, you're looking at this, you're retired now, you might want to cut some of these expenses, and they might want to give you a better deal. One thing you always can do though is increase your deductibles. That can save you on premiums. So instead of having, let's say, a $100 deductible, maybe increase that to $500. But you only want to do that if you have the cash on hand in a savings account to pay that deductible if you have to pay it. But consider that. Another thing you want to look at is, do you still need life insurance if your mortgage is paid off, kids out of college, and or have substantial 401k assets? Maybe you don't have a great need for life insurance that you've been paying for all these years, because your kids are gonna, if the mortgage is paid, kids out of college, those are things you've been saving for your whole life, and you got money in the 401k, the kids are gonna inherit that, and then they'll be fine. Believe me, they'll be fine. Okay. Another thing you might want to do is talk about those life insurance premiums after reevaluating them. Maybe you take those same premium dollars and put those into a long-term care plan for yourself in your old age. Maybe you instead of spending that money on life insurance, shop around, start looking for long-term care. And that way you can take some of that burden off your family. If you don't have a caregiver, maybe your kids aren't around and they may not be able to take care of it, not willing to, or what have you. Maybe you get some long-term care coverage and take those same dollars you spend on life insurance and apply it to long-term care. Another thing you can do is save money on taxes. You can take a $3,000 tax loss on mutual funds and stocks in any given year. And if your tax loss is greater than $3,000, you can carry that carryover to future tax years. Self-employed people can make tax deductible SEP IRA contributions. The maximum contribution in 2020 is $57,000 or 25% of your compensation. So if you're self-employed, hey, there's another way to save money, catch up, if you will. And those are tax deductible contributions for a business owner.
Hey, Jeff, it's Latrice
Yes.
again. We have
Yes.
3 really good questions in the chat.
Okay,
So are you able to see the chat, or you want me to read them out?
go ahead and read the question.
Okay. So the first one is saying, for small business owners wanting to offer a retirement plan, where do you suggest we start?
Yeah, a SEP IRA is probably where you want to start. It's a simple plan. And what you got to keep in mind is you have to be able to fund that plan, and whatever percentage of compensation you're going to defer in that plan, you have to have that same percentage for your employees. Now, there's certain limits as to what employees you have to cover, but once you meet those thresholds, whatever percentage of that you set aside for yourself, you have to set aside that same percentage for those eligible employees. I would probably start there.
Okay. Then the next question, should you make big purchases before or after retirement, such as houses, cars, reverse mortgages, timeshares, etc.?
Well, it depends. I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, some of those things, if you provided, if if you set aside money for some of those purchases that you plan to do for retirement, that's one thing. As long as you can afford it, I don't really have a big problem with that. Here's one other thing I do see people that I don't think is so smart. I've seen people when they retire, they think, well, now I'm gonna buy this big car, or this fancy car, and that kind of stuff. To me, a car is a depreciating asset. It's not gonna do you much good. It'll give you a little satisfaction, maybe, but you're gonna see them get the same utility out of a Nissan that you're gonna get out of, I don't know, a Porsche, other than somebody see you driving around and make you feel good about yourself, okay? Maybe it does, and if that's what you really want. I'm not knocking it, I'm just saying, you know, from a financial standpoint, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, okay? So if it's me, I'm gonna be looking to maybe cut expenses in retirement so I can have a longer, more confident retirement.
All right, and then one more. Can you, so they're asking if we can ask you to give a novice in the stock market that's trying to do it on their own some tidbits of good advice.
A novice. Well, that's a good question. I would say there's so many resources available to you now in terms of investing in the stock market for beginners. You can Google and you can get all kinds of resources available to you. And I think you want to take a look at not just one, but several of those. But one thing I would say to you, you got to determine what kind of investor you're going to be. In other words, are you going to be a buy and hold investor? The one that buys good quality stocks and holds on to them for a long period of time, okay? Or you're going to be a trader where you're going to find a stock that's undervalued and hits a certain price and you get out and you make a profit and then you do the same thing all over again. Decide what kind of investor that you're going to be or you want to be, and then stick to it. The key about investing in the market is it's not timing the market necessarily, but it's time in the market. Big difference. Getting in and out of the people who are trying to time the market. But the way you make money over time in stocks is to buy them and stay in the market, stay fully invested. Even in the bad times, the market's correct, stay in, timing the market makes you the money more so than any other way.
Okay.
Anything else?
There
Another
are
one?
no other questions in the chat.
Hey, here, I got one final point I want to make. And this is, I think, is a fairly big one. There's 2 points actually. Consider paying out portfolio income versus reinvesting it. When you're in a 401k, you're reinvesting all the dividends and capital gains that, you know, that come a part of the stocks in the portfolio. And that helps you build your capital over time. But in retirement, you might want to consider having that income paid out, having those dividends paid out to you on a monthly basis, and the capital gains distribution paid out to you. That way you preserve your principal and you're living on the income, okay? And also, if you preserve your principal, you have the ability to pass down and create generational wealth for your family. You can leave your kids something, okay? So consider that. And the final one is, and I know I got a few clients on this call, and I've talked about this to some of them, they've actually done it. Consider paying off your mortgage before retirement. That's a big thing for me, big thing. I really believe in that. If you do that, you can save thousands of dollars in interest, and you can boost, think about it. If you paid off your mortgage, let's say your mortgage is $1,500 a month, and you pay that off before you retire, now you got $1,500 of disposable income that you could use for something else. So you can boost your monthly cash flow to the extent of that mortgage payment that you don't have to pay anymore. I know this works. I've done this for myself. I went on a plan back in 2004 to pay off my mortgage, right? And I went from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage. And that meant that my mortgage would have been paid off in 2014, all right? So using a software program that I came up with, and I still have, and I use till this day, I started making extra payments on my monthly mortgage. And I made one-time lump sum payments at the end of the year. Instead of paying off my mortgage in 15 years, paid it off in 11.
Wow.
That was 10 years ago. So I haven't had a mortgage payment in over 10 years. My house is paid for free and clear. People can do this. It's not rocket science. I can show you how to do it. But it takes discipline, like all these things take. They take discipline. It takes discipline to save money. It takes discipline not to spend money. It takes discipline to figure out where you can move money to other assets to make your retirement, a little bit better.
Jeff, one final question before we wrap up and thank you for this phenomenal presentation and turn it over to our chapter president. Someone is asking, are you familiar with the low investments on Cash App? They range from $1, and I just lost it, $1 and up, depending on what company you invest in.
Say that again. I didn't get the first
Yep.
part, please.
Okay, so it says, is Jeff familiar with the low investments on Cash App? They ranged from $1 and up, depending on what company you invest in.
No, I've heard of some of those things, but I don't deal in that area at all. I'm a full service financial advisor. So that's something new that's come upon. There's all kind of things like that are out now. I've heard of one called Robinhood, and there's a couple other ones. Those things aren't bad, but you got to really be careful and understand what you're doing. You got to be real careful with some of those things. I would stress for anyone to try to work with a financial advisor. Somebody's going to give you some guidance. Somebody you can trust. That's really important. That's going to put your interests first and not what they have to provide or sell. You got to get somebody who you can talk to almost anytime, who will return your phone call. On the internet, nobody's going to return your call. Okay, that's a big problem. All right, but no, I'm not that one in particular. I'm not familiar with, but I know they're out there, and they're okay, I guess. But you got to be really careful. Okay.
So, Soror Martin Shermel, I see that you're back with us. So, I'm going to give this back to our phenomenal moderator.
I'm sorry, I lost power. Jeff, I have a question. Someone texted me also. Are you taking new clients right now?
Yes, I am. Sure, I'll be happy to. Yep,
Okay,
no problem.
great. Okay. I think that's all that we have. And again, we put his information in the chat. You guys can also reach Jeff on his Facebook page and message him if you like. It's Jeffrey McDaniels, MBA. You can also just call him. That phone number is 330-628-8099. Again, he's at Ameriprise Financial. Jeff, we would like to thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And I'd like to thank everybody for spending your time with the Deltas today. We really do appreciate that. And I am going to turn this over to our fearless leader, Madam President, Wanda Lash.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you as president on behalf of Stark County Alumni Chapter. Thank you to Soror Shermel Martin for moderating the conversation today and your leadership with this event, along with Soror Dr. Latrice Snodgrass and the Economic Development Committee. The current Economic Development Program initiative of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is focused on building financial fortitude. So our charge as members is to provide financial education throughout our local communities. And thank you to Jeff McDaniels for your willingness to share your expertise around personal finances and financial planning, specifically for assisting us in understanding retirement planning. And Jeff, as you take on these new clients, don't forget about your client, Wanda Lash here.
No problem.
And we just had a conversation, so I appreciate you sharing all the more. Thank you to all of you who tuned in to support our programming efforts, our sorors, our family, our friends, our new friends. I trust that you received the many nuggets that were provided today. I certainly learned new things, and I believe we met our goals. We set out to help our program participants set and define goals, develop a plan to achieve them, and get prepared to put your plan into action. So now that we are all more informed about managing our money, our financial situations to plan for a better future, we have a responsibility to do better. When we know better, we should do better, right? And each person's situation is different. We realize that, but no matter what it is, there are tips, strategies, and resources that can provide us all options. So I challenge each of us to think of what your next action will be to improve your situation for your future. Again, I've had a conversation with Jeff recently, and we made some changes. And now, Jeff, my next thought is, okay, how do I get this mortgage paid off before retirement? So again, challenge each of you, what will your next action be to improve your financial situation for your future? So thank you again.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
President.
you.
Enjoy the remainder of your day.